Hello guys, today we'll be discussing about research design, and in this lecture we'll discuss what research design is, how we are going to choose between the research designs, and we'll be discussing about the types of research designs. Basically we'll classify it into two, and we'll be discussing about the difference between these two research designs. So let's start by defining what research design is. We have three definitions about research design, but the basic definition, the key term is, as usual, a research design is a master plan, or it is a blueprint. So when you say a master plan or a blueprint, it will show you the overall direction of your research. It will help you to understand how you are going to conduct your research ahead of time before you start conducting the research. So it is a blueprint, it is a master plan. Assume like you are going to build a certain bridge or a building, but before you start building that bridge or building, you need to have a blueprint so that you will understand uh, which structure will be set first, how the structure will be, what the final results will be, and so on. So the same uh, goes for research design. So when you say research design, it will show you the overall structure of your research work. It will dictate you how you are going to go about the research ahead of time before you even started conducting your research. So when you are discussing about research design, the research design should have a clear objective, meaning you should understand why you are conducting the research. You should understand the objectives of your research. So the research design should be clear. For instance, if you say it is a descriptive type of research design, I'll come to that point. So if you are going to use descriptive type of research design, the objective is just to describe the phenomenon in the market. So you should have a clear objectives integrated with the research design. The research design will tell you what is the objective of that specific research. Again, the research design should be linked with the research questions, but it should not only link it with the research questions, by the way, it should also link it with the research title as well. For instance, if your research title is an assessment of uh, advertising effectiveness, let's say, it is just assessing what's effective, how effective the advertisement is. It's just a descriptive type of research. It's not causal, it is not anything else. So it should link with the research title as well as the research objective. One more example. Let's say if your title is the impact of advertisement in motivating consumers purchase. So you have impact, you are going to see the relation between the two variables, which is the advertisement and that of motivation of consumers. So in this type of research title, the research design that you are going to use will be causal type of research design. It will show you the relationship. So it should link with the research questions as well as the research titles. So number one, it should have a clear objective. Number two, your research design should be linked with the research questions as well as the research titles. Again, uh, the research design will show you the source of information from whom you are going to collect the data, how you are going to collect the data. It's not just the source of data, but it will also show you the sampling methods, the procedures that you are going to use, and then what type of data collection instruments that you will be using, whether you are going to use observation, whether you are going to use survey methods or experimentation, and then it will show you the schedule that is required to conduct that research. It will also show you the budget that is required to conduct the research. So whenever you think of developing a research design, uh, that research design should have clear objectives, as we have discussed, and this research design should be derived or should be emanated from the research questions and that of the research titles. And then this research design specifies the source of data and the type of data, and then it will also show you the sampling methods, the sampling procedures. We'll discuss about sampling in another video. So it will show you the sampling methods and the procedures. It will also show you the schedule, meaning the time span that is required for you to conduct the research, and it will also show you the budget that is required in conducting the research. I'll come back to this with examples when we discuss about the types of research design that we have at our disposal. So in designing your research, in developing your research design, uh, you should justify why you have selected that specific research design. You might have exploratory type of research design, or you might choose causal type of research design, but you need to justify why you have selected the research design, whether you have selected a descriptive type of research design or you have selected it causal type of research design. So you should justify your reasons. Again, in developing the research design, you should try and make the research design as effective as possible, because if you develop your research design poorly, then the whole thing will fail, meaning the data, the information, the result, the findings that you get will not address the research question and will not acquire your objectives. For instance, if you want to know how the timing that the advertisement is launched, let's say whether it is at lunchtime or at dinner time or anything else, uh, which timing is appropriate to launch your advertisements, and you are going to select exploratory type of research design. It will not give you the information that you have required, because of the nature of the exploratory type of research design. I'll come back to that in a bit of minutes. All right, so if you design the research design, okay, if your research design, the development is poor, then the results will be poor, and it will not fulfill the objectives. You cannot acquire your objectives in conducting the research. Again, in developing the research design, because research by itself is scientific, so the research design, the development process, is also scientific. So because it is scientific, you need to see the procedures, you need to have the methodologies and the others out of your own wish or your own inference. You should not include your wish, you should not include your personal interest in developing the research design. Just because it is easier, it doesn't mean that the research design should be applied. So you should not be biased in selecting and developing your research design. Again, if you are biased, then the research design development will be poor. The whole research result and findings will be poor. So saying that, in choosing the research design, in developing and choosing the research design, there is two terms or two issues that need to be in balance. Number one is the decision maker's perspective, and the other is the target respondent's perspective. You should balance between the two. You should not only focus on the decision maker's perspective. You should not only focus on the target respondent's perspective, but you should balance between the decision maker's perspective and that of the target respondent's perspective. So let's see in diagram what are these two perspectives. Okay, so from the decision maker's perspective, what the decision makers require is accurate information. They need to have accurate information. They might want to have a current information, up-to-date information. They might want to have a sufficient information. They want to have the information that is available, and the information the relevant information. So these are the decision makers requirements. Okay, they need you as a researcher to provide them with accurate information, current information, meaning up-to-date information, sufficient information, and so on. But this is the problem. You cannot provide them with all of these requirements at once. You cannot provide them with accurate information and that of sufficient and which is available and which is relevant. So you should choose between these. Okay, you should accommodate, you should balance between these, because it is impossible, I mean almost impossible, it is difficult for the researchers to fulfill all of these requirements. From the respondent's perspective, you might see whether the respondents are public or whether the respondents are private. In terms of accessibility, this range will show you whether the respondents are accessible or not. And from the layer of response, okay, from the response side, the response might be repressed, or it might be unconscious, meaning they might not give you with adequate and enough information, because they might not remember the information that you require. Or in the other extreme, it might be spontaneous. It might be easier to access the responses, the feedbacks. So if the responses are unconscious, or if it is repressed, meaning if the information be shallow, then you probably will use exploratory type of research design by applying interviews, unstructured interviews, and you might use observations. You have examples in here, so you can see how you are going to apply these methods. If the response is spontaneous or if it is conventional, then you might use a highly structured type of questionnaires. So apparently, when you use highly structured questionnaires, you might use a conclusive type of research design. We'll discuss what's this conclusive type of research design and exploratory type of research design is. Don't be confused, don't get confused. Just follow the video lectures. So after you balance between the decision maker's perspective and that of the respondent's perspective, you have different classifications of research design. Basically, you have two type of research design. The first one is exploratory type of research design, and the second one is conclusive type of research design. We'll discuss what the difference is between exploratory and that of conclusive type of research design. But let's just define what these research designs stand for, and we'll see the other classifications underneath the sub classifications actually. So when you say exploratory type of research design, it is a type of research design that you will be using if you want to have an insight about a certain phenomenon, if you want to have a highlight information about that specific phenomenon, and it will help you to understand that phenomenon, and it will help you to identify the problem. So exploratory type of research design is more of problem identification research design. It will help you to identify the problems. It will help you to understand the phenomenon. It will give you the highlights. It will give you insight information about that specific phenomenon. So you will use exploratory type of research design if you want to understand that specific issue, and if you want to identify the problems. When it comes to the conclusive type of research design, it is more of problem solving research design than problem identification research design. Okay, so when you say conclusive, it will help you to solve that specific problem, and it will give you not a highlight, it will give you detailed information about that specific phenomenon, and it will help you to solve the problem that exists in the market. So comparatively, exploratory type of research design is problem identifying research, and conclusive research design is problem solving research design. In exploratory type of research design, it will give you the highlights. In conclusive type of research design, it will give you a detailed information. So when you say exploratory type of research design, it will be categorized into qualitative and that of quantitative exploration or exploratory research design. So when you say qualitative exploratory research design, the researcher focuses on the quality rather than the numbers or the quantity, and the quantitative type of exploration will focus on quantity. Going back to the conclusive type of research design, it further classifies into descriptive type of research design and that of causal type of research design. So as the name indicates, when you say descriptive type of research design, it will give you a description. It just describes the phenomenon as it is. When you say causal research design, it will relate the two or more variables. It will give you a relationship type of approach. Okay, it has a relationship type of approach, and when you say descriptive type of research design, it will have a descriptive approach. For instance, let's say if you want to study the customer's step in purchasing a certain product, uh, which steps do they take in purchasing a certain product, then you are going to use a descriptive type of research design. But if you want to understand the income that the customers gets, or the income that the customers earns, and you know, the income's effect on purchase frequency, then you are going to use causal type of research design. So when you say causal research design, it will give you a cause and effect approach. It has a relationship type of approach. So this is the definitions of exploratory, conclusive. In the conclusive, you have descriptive and that of causal research design. But before we go to cross-sectional and longitudinal uh, classifications of descriptive research design, let's discuss about the differences that exist between exploratory research design and that of conclusive research design. Uh, so these are the measuring variables, or these are the variables that will be used to differentiate between exploratory type of research design and that of conclusive type of research design. So in terms of objective, Uh, when you use exploratory type of research design, the objective is just to provide insights that will help you to understand the phenomenon. But if you use conclusive type of research design, it's not just to provide insights, it will help you to test uh, hypotheses, to examine relationships, and so on. So the objectives are completely different. So in term when we use exploratory type of research design, it is a problem identification research design, and it will provide you insights or highlights of the phenomenon. But when you use conclusive, it is problem solving research, and it will give you to test, or it will help you to test hypothesis. In terms of characteristics, when you use exploratory type of research design, the information that is needed is loosely defined. It's not concrete. But when we see conclusive type of research design, the information that is needed is clearly defined. It is clear and it is concrete. The research process, if you use exploratory research design, it is flexible. But if you use conclusive type of research design, it is formal and it is structured. Sample that is required, we'll also discuss about samples in the next videos. So the sample that is required in using exploratory research design is a small in number, and in conclusive you are going to require larger number of sample respondents. The data analysis in here, it could be qualitative or quantitative, but in conclusive it is more of quantitative. You focus on quantitative type of data analysis techniques. The findings or the results. So in here, the results or the findings, if you are using exploratory type of research design, you can not make decisions using the findings of exploratory type of research designs. You cannot conclude based on the findings, but if you are using conclusive type of research design, you can conclude and you can make decisions based on the finding that you use if you are developing conclusive type of research design. The methods that will be used in exploratory and that of conclusive. In exploratory, you can use unstructured observation, but in here, because it is formal and structured, you are going to use structured type of observations. And in exploratory type of research design, the surveys will be experts, or the experts are conducting the surveys, but in here the surveys not necessarily expert based. In exploratory type, you are going to use secondary data, and in here you are going to use secondary data. So these are the similarities between exploratory and that of conclusive. You can apply you can use secondary data for both exploratory as well as the conclusive type of research design. So these are the basic differences that exist between exploratory type of research design and conclusive type of research design. The other name, sometimes they use exploratory research as problem identification research, and conclusive as problem solving research. So saying that, let's go back to the classifications of descriptive research design or descriptive research. We classify descriptive research in the diagram, as you see, as cross-sectional research design and that of longitudinal research design. So it is a little bit tricky, but it's simple. So I'll try to make it as simple as possible. So when you say cross-sectional design, the respondents will be used only once, meaning the data that you are going to collect from the respondents will be only once. But when you are going to use longitudinal research design, you can collect data many times from that specific population or that specific respondents. I'll come back to the examples, but let's finish the classifications. If you use single cross-sectional designs, it means there will be only one sample group. But if you use a multi cross-sectional design, there will be two or more sample groups, but again the data will be collected only once from that groups. Let's say with the examples, all right. Let's say you want to study the usage of cell phones in terms of age. Okay, let's assume how the different age groups use the cellular phones. So if you want to study the different age groups in using cellular phones, let's say in terms of age between 18 to 25 and between 26 to 30, how these groups will use the cellular phones. So if you collect data from this group only once, then it is known as cross-sectional research design. But if you repeatedly see the progress, the development when they are 18, and then when they become 19 and 20 and so on from the same sample, then it is known as longitudinal research design. If you are going to use a single cross-sectional research design, there is only one group between 18 to 25. Okay, so the cellular phone usage in the age between 18 to 25, then there is only one group, then it is known as single cross-sectional designs. But if there is two or more sample groups, then it is known as multi cross-sectional research design. The difference between cross-sectional and that of longitudinal is that when you say cross-sectional research design, you only collect data or information from a certain sample only once. That's it, throughout the lifetime. If you could just collect once, then it's known as cross-sectional. But if you use the same sample more than once for repeated frequently, then it is known as longitudinal research design. So this is the difference, all right. Longitudinal research differs from cross-sectional design in that the longitudinal research design, okay, the sample or samples remain the same over time. So there is no change in the sample. You are going to use those samples again and again in collecting the data or the information. So you are going to use longitudinal type of research design when you want to study the development progress or the behavioral change of a certain group. Let's say if you want to study the relation between age growth and that of product choice, you are going to use the same sample, the same person again and again. When that person becomes 18, when the same person becomes 19, 20 and so on, you are going to collect similar data from the same sample more than once, then it is known as longitudinal research design. I hope it is clear to understand the types of research designs that we have at our disposal. So in choosing a research design, whenever you choose between these research design, when you choose between descriptive and that of exploratory, or between exploratory and that of causal research design, or between exploratory type of research design and conclusive research design, there are different parameters that you need to see. The first is uh, when little is known about the problem, okay, when you don't have information about the problem, when you want to understand the problem, then the research design that we will be applying will be exploratory type of research design. Okay, if you don't have an understanding about the phenomenon, if you want to understand about the phenomenon, then you are going to use exploratory type of research design. Again, after that, the exploratory research design will be the initial most of the time, because you want to understand the phenomenon, you want to understand the problem that exists, but not necessarily, not always. So after exploratory research design, there will be uh, uh, other research designs to be used, either descriptive or causal research design. After understanding what type of problem exists, after you have understood the problem clearly, we are going to use descriptive or causal research design. If you just want to understand the problem, then that's enough. You are going to use exploratory research design. But if you want to understand more, if you want to solve the problem after using exploratory, you are going to use descriptive or causal type of research design, depending on your objective. If your objective is to understand the relationship, then you are going to use causal type of research design. But if you just want to describe a phenomenon, you will be using a descriptive type of research design. The third, we have said you don't have to start with exploratory type of research designs, right? If you already know the problem, let's say if you conduct a research before, if you conduct a survey before, then you don't have to you know again try to identify the problems, because the problem is already known. So you are going to start by descriptive or causal research design, and not necessarily you don't have to start with the exploratory research design. Okay, again, you are going to see the precision. Okay, you are going to see the precision with which the problem has been identified. If you have identified the problems clearly with precision, then you don't have to start with exploratory research design. Number one is if you have conducted a research before. Number two is if you precisely know the problems, you don't have to start with exploratory type of research design. But all in all, when you develop a research design, you have to identify and you have to understand your objective, what you want to achieve, and you should link it with the research titles, and you should link it with the research questions and so on. This is how we are going to select research design. But whenever you develop a research design, there might be a different source of errors. So basically we have total error. So total error is the cumulative of all these errors. So the total error might be because of random sampling error, and it might be because of non-sampling error. So we'll discuss about sampling in another video. So when you say random sampling error, it is caused by when you select a sample. Okay, when you select a sample, if you make errors, then you will have random sampling errors. For instance, if the samples doesn't represent the population, let's say you want to study about the effect of advertisement on consumers purchase pattern, or on consumers purchase decision. And let's say we have 150,000 customers that consumes that specific product, and that they observe that specific advertisement. And let's say you pick 50 from 150,000 samples. So I mean population. So the 50 individuals you have picked might not be representative of the 150,000. So if the sample that you pick doesn't represent the population perfectly, whatever decision that you make using that sample will uh, lead you to error. So it is known as random sampling errors. So it is associated with uh, sampling. If you let's say if you use the wrong sampling technique, again it will be random sampling error. So random sampling error is associated with imperfection in representation of the whole population. So non-sampling error is any error that might be incurred or that might occur other than sampling. So when you say sampling, non-sampling error, it might be because of the question that you have formulated in collecting the data. It might be in the process of data collection and so on. So the non-sampling is any error that is not associated with representation of the samples, okay, representation of the population. When you say random sampling, it is associated with representations, but when you say non-sampling error, it doesn't link with samples. So non-sampling error might be a response error, it might be non-response error. So when you say non-response error, it is associated with uh, uh, samples. I mean, the sample population doesn't respond to your questionnaire or to your interview, so it is known as non-response error. Error. So whenever the sample that is selected doesn't give you any response, then it is known as non-response error. It is associated with that. So when you say response error, they provide you with responses, okay, they give you feedbacks, but the feedback they have provided is a misleading information. The information that is collected from the respondents are misleading. They give you feedback, but the feedback is misleading. So the response error might be because of researcher error, it might be because of interviewer error, or it might be because of respondent error. So let's start from the simplest one, all right? So when you say respondent error, the respondents might not uh, give you appropriate feedback. They might not be willing to provide with the information that is required, the appropriate information. It might be inability to understand the question that you have asked. So it is a respondent error. It is associated with the respondents. The interviewer error is associated with the interviewer, the data collector. The data collector might not clarify the questions, or he or she might be cheating on the responses, and so on. The interviewer might not record the response that is provided by the respondent correctly, and so on. So it is associated with the data collector. The researcher might commit errors, but these errors is associated with population definition when uh, the researcher defined the population, he or she might define it wrongly, or in the data analysis part, the researcher might not use appropriate data analysis technique, or he or she might miss out certain data. So this is how the errors will be committed. So the total error is a cumulative of these errors, and it is further classified into random sampling error, which is associated with representation, non-sampling error, which is associated other than sampling or representation, and the non-sampling will further classified into a response error and a non-response error, and so on. So you should look out for not committing this error so that the research design will be appropriate and your research finding will help so much. So this will be the end of the today's lecture, which is about research design. Thank you very much for watching the video, and stay safe.